In the Lab, a Texans podcast that takes a different look at things. Drew Dougherty and John Harris have their lab coats and goggles on, and the Bunsen burners burning. Here's Drew.
Hey there, it's been a while. It's In the Lab. I'm Drew Dougherty. That's John Harris putting up the U with squigglies, now thumbs and all that stuff. Hey man, missed doing this with you, but really during training camp, it's just not conducive to all this because we've got a zillion different things going on. So welcome back. How are you?
Yeah, it's good to be back, Drew. I thought about In the Lab each and every Tuesday as we would be at practice and sweating ourselves to death in some sense. And
we were in the labbing together, just not for the people, basically.
You got it. Exactly. And so there were a lot of things that we kind of shared with one another that we probably couldn't share on In the Lab. And some of those things, one thing in particular came to fruition at some point through late in training camp as we got ready for the 53-man roster. But yeah, it's good to be back and glad, obviously, I see you pretty much every day. So it's cool to see you, but it's also good to talk to the people as well.
Indeed. Okay. Yesterday, Nick Caserio, general manager of the Texans, had a press conference with the local media and really, spent quite a bit of time. And let me preface this by saying general managers, when they have press conferences, typically for about 20 to 25 minutes, sometimes longer, but typically they don't say anything. Like they talk, but there's not much learned. There's a lot of talking, but not much is learned. And I'm not judging by that because they got to keep things close to the vest. They don't want to tip their hands to other general managers around the league. That's true of Nick Caserio. That's true of when Bill O'Brien was doing it. That's true when Brian Gaine did it. Rick Smith, those guys, at least around here, they don't typically say too much. You don't get big, hot, steamy sound bites when a general manager has a press conference. But yesterday, we kind of learned four interesting, the nuggets I got from it. And we're going to break them down individually. Trading, negotiations, pass catching, and Scotty Phillips. So let's start with the trades. What I, was kind of confirmed by basically watching the way Nick Caserio has operated since he took over. He said, listen, we're going to use 6th and 7th and trade for guys that we think we might have a chance to hit on that are veterans. So, they don't mind burning a 6th or 7th round pick. Typically 6th and 7th rounders, if they make your team the first year, that's good. And then a lot of times you'll see them cast to the side in the year 2, 3, 4 or after. So he's not afraid of using some of those picks to get a guy that he thinks might stick around.
To go along with that, I racked my brain this morning for, first of all, the Texans having a 7th round pick. I can't remember the last time they had a 7th round pick because I know it wasn't in this draft. There may have been some others, but I was trying to think about a 7th round pick. Cullen Gillespie was a 7th round pick, and he lasted a year and some change.
Yep.
Kelly, the Jermaine Kelly, I think his name was, from San Jose State.
Yeah.
Never even got off the injured list for the year and some change that he was here. And so I think, and maybe I'm one of the more guilty parties here, because I have always pushed the fact that you got to build through the draft. Now, when I've said that, my thought has been, you've got to make sure that in the draft, there are more hits than misses in as many rounds as possible. But the fact of the matter is, and I'm not saying you just go in the 6th and 7th round and just pick whomever. Obviously everybody points back to Tom Brady, but there have been over the years a number of 6th round picks that have been good. Even in this organization, there have been 6th round picks that have been good contributors. Andre Howe. I'm trying to remember if Andre Howe was a 6th or 7th. I think Andre might have been a 7th. He might have been one of the guys that actually worked.
7th, yeah.
It was the seventh, and
I'm gonna break down. I'm gonna break down all the sevens when you finish your point here.
Yeah, but the point being, if you think about a draft pick as the opportunity to select a player who is coming out of college, who has never played in the NFL, or you look at it as an asset that can acquire a player that has already played in the NFL with some experience. And I take the Ryan Izzo issue. I don't know, it's not an issue, but you take Ryan Izzo, for example. Nick traded his 7th-round pick, and for Ryan Izzo, it was somebody that he knew and somebody that had played the Patriots for a couple of years. And so take a shot, looking to bolster the tight end room. I mean, it's almost like they spend it kind of as insurance in some sense, looking at the tight end crew. Nick had not been here, so he hadn't seen everybody up close. So you take a little bit of insurance saying, look, if the tight end crew is not exactly what I expect, can I find a guy in Ryan Izzo that can come in and give me 20 to 25 plays a game, playing a number of the different tight end spots, H-back, motion, sniffer, whatever, playing as inline Y? Yeah, you take a shot that you can trade a 7th for a player like that. I don't have a problem with that. Nick did acknowledge, he's like, look, if you want to say, hey, we gave up a pick and the player didn't work out, and so that's a miss. He even acknowledged, he said, yeah, okay, I can understand people being upset about that, and you want to hit on those particular players. But the flip side of it is, it's not as if you gave up basically the opportunity to pick the 226th best college player versus going out and getting a guy that has played in the NFL. Yeah. So I don't mind the philosophy at all. Now, where it bites you is if you are doing that with a bunch of 1st-round picks, and that's what the Texans have. Because if you look at this roster, look, the Deshaun situation is what it is, but it doesn't look like he's going to play for the team. So when you look at this situation, the only 1st-round draft picks that are on this team that were drafted after 2012, the only one is Titus Howard.
Yeah. You also have Whitney Merciless, but that was a decade.
Well, that's what I'm saying, after 2012.
Right.
So you got Whitney in 2012 and you got Titus in 2019. I mean, 1st-round picks are valuable for a reason, and we haven't had them. Now, we got Laramie Tunsil out of that deal, but Laramie can't play corner. Laramie can only play one spot. And so there have been opportunities lost because you didn't have those picks. You didn't have an 18. No, you didn't have an 18 because you drafted Deshaun. So, okay, I can live with that. You didn't have the ones in 20 and 21 because you traded for Laramie. Now, one of them I can see. 2 of them, not at all. But point being, the draft is incredibly valuable. Every GM will tell you the draft has got to be valuable. However, as Nick has said, and he makes his point to tell me this all the time because he knows how much I think of the draft. He's like, look, your team has to be the combination of draft picks, waiver claims, trades, signings. It's got to be all of that, because you can't have a team of 53 draft picks. It's not possible.
Yeah.
So you've got to be able to put all that group together. So I appreciated the way that he did it. And I heard a caller at Sports Radio 610 saying, you're just giving up, 6th and 7th round picks. I kind of get where the caller was going with that, but I don't mind the fact that Nick took a shot on Ryan Izzo. Okay, it didn't work.
Yeah.
But they're going to be 2-3 times down the road where it might work, that you gave up a 7th and you end up getting a quality starter for the next 2-3 years or whatever the case might be. So I don't mind the philosophy at all, even though I see the absolute and complete value in the draft. And I think what a lot of people have missed is that had there been the mega trade that a lot of people expected, there would have been numerous opportunities to draft players. And yeah, you gave up some picks to move up and get Nico Collins because Nico is legit. You gave up some, possible 4th, 5th round picks to go up and get Nico Collins, who is legit. You got him in the 3rd round. Nico's going to end up being a starter here for a long time. And you got him in the 3rd round, but you weren't going to get him where you were selecting next. So you throw all that in. I think Nick looks at it the way that you should, and that is draft picks are capital. How you determine what you're going to do with that capital, that ends up being the key. And I think he laid it out very clearly. He's like, look, if we think moving and swapping some of that capital is going to help us, we're going to do it. If not, we won't. Like, okay, cool. I'm down with that.
And then one other thing, I think there's a teensy tiny percentage, maybe even bigger, but a lot of these guys don't like having a 7th rounder because that means they can get a jump on getting into the undrafted free agent market too. I've seen that in the past. I don't know if that holds true with Caserio and this crew, but I know for a fact under previous regimes that was something that was positive. Let's go through the 7th rounders in team history. None this year, none last year. 19, you had Cullen Gillespie, good solid special teamer on a good solid special teams. Played fullback a few snaps, but he was a 7th rounder. I like Cullen, and I wish him luck, but he's the last 7th rounder you had. The year before, 18, Jermaine Kelly never played for you. Same thing with Kyle Fuller in 17, offensive lineman, never really played for you. You know
what he did? He played, Kyle Fuller played tight end. If you remember the famous game in Cincinnati in 2017 when we had no tight ends.
Yeah. So
I mean, but that's the extent of it.
He was drafted. He was a center. So that's exactly. None in 16. The last player you drafted in 16 in that draft was DJ Reader, 5th rounder. That worked out. Kenny Hilliard in 15. Andre Howe, an absolute stud hit of a 7th rounder. I mean, you nailed that. So when you're trading these guys away, you might have an Andre Howe that you're missing out on. Lonnie Ballantyne was also a 7th rounder that year. Never really played for you. Didn't have one in 13. Didn't have one in 12. In 11, okay, you nailed another one. Stud 7th rounder, Derek Newton.
Yeah, Derek
Newton. Starting right tackle for you. He actually played as a rookie in the jumbo sets, like when they'd go with, he'd be like, he'd have to brush and say he's eligible, but he was basically your, another lineman. And then Cheta Ozulu was the last pick of the entire draft. Never really played for you.
Yeah.
And in 2010, Doran Dickerson, another guy who very, very talented, but just didn't really see much time for you. So over the last decade, that's sort of been the book on what the Texans have done. They nailed 2 of them early on in Newton and Howe, but for the most part, they got rid of them so they could start on the undrafted part, or they just got guys that were 7th rounders and they didn't absolutely hit. Okay, so another thing, part 2 of the 4 parts that we sort of learned from Caserio is negotiating is not off limits during the season. Sometimes that has been the case here with multiple regimes again, but Caserio said, hey, depending on the agent and player, we'll work with them and we'll figure out about trying to get stuff done. So, here in 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks now, it's not going to be a closed window until January, February for the Texans. They might do renegotiations. They might make some changes there. And I thought that was kind of interesting. It was not something that's always offered up as from a GM. It might happen, but they don't talk about it. But that was talked about, and we'll see how it happens. Right? That was kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, the way that it was a good question.
Yeah.
Nick's response was sort of along the lines of, well, yeah, I mean, we'll just kind of take each as, case by case basis. And he sort of kind of put in the player's lap. And it's like, look, if we feel like this is a player we want to continue with, then if the player's agent wants to talk about it or the player wants to talk about it, we'll talk about it. If not, then we won't. I mean, he just seemed very like, well, okay, there's kind of 2 ways to do this, and it's pretty simple. He almost was sort of incredulous that there would be, any other way. If you want the player to stay with your particular team. So that was what stood out to me.
That was refreshing to hear.
It was,
I think we missed out on stuff in the past around here because
and I think there's one player in particular a lot of people think about or talk about. And that's Tyrann Mathieu. Could you have locked up Tyrann back in 2018? Could you have locked him up if you did something during the season? Because I knew Tyrann talked with me wanting to be somewhere and be somewhere permanently. And you can really kind of see that the way he talks about Kansas City and all that kind of stuff. So I could have seen that help in that situation. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that he addressed that the way that he did with the question. It was a good question. Absolutely.
Yeah. And he also answered another one about receivers. And it's kind of a multi-folded question, but you talk about just catching passes and like the different zones of the offense that they like catch passes, but also it's sort of, he was hinting that there's going to be a lot more movement roster wise because they probably think there's a guy or two or more out there they want to add to the mix because they've only got 5 of them right now. So
right.
That was, I don't want to say it was super telling, but it was kind of telling when you.
Yeah. And of those 5, as you mentioned, Drew, 2 of them, Andre Roberts practiced, I think, for the first 2 or 3 days. And then we haven't seen him practice again. And Anthony Miller got hurt, unfortunately, up in Green Bay. So you're talking about 5 guys, but 2 of them have been banged up.
Yeah.
And we don't know. I mean, we don't know when they'll be back. So we'll kind of keep our fingers crossed you get both of them back. But as soon as I saw the roster construction, I looked at it and went, okay. Two things stood out. Number one, I felt like there would be 10 combined between receivers and running backs, but I thought it would be 4 and 6. I didn't think it would be 5 and 5. So I do think those 2 positions they might look at. I don't think they're going to have. I don't know if there's any way 5 guys will go into the game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but it probably leads to our final point, that being Scotty Phillips. We'll get to him in a second, but he's been magnificent. And we've talked all offseason. Oh, you got 4 vets, and you and I would say, wait a second, Scotty Phillips is pretty good, but he's just up against a numbers game. Well, he defied the numbers game, really, the way he played. But I do think there's something with receivers, and I just think off the top of my head, the few of them there, John Smoke Brown, I think it was in Oakland, maybe could have been Buffalo. I can't remember where he was his most recent stop. I just saw that he was out there, and he's a guy with speed, downfield speed. He's always had speed. I mean, his name is Smoke, by God. So he can run, and there'll be more guys of that ilk that are out there. So there may be a waiver claim coming. There might be another cut. I mean, look, we're 10 days at our recording here, 10 days away from the opener. So might be a receiver or 2 that are out there that they're going to take a look at.
Yeah, we're recording this at 9:57 a.m. on Tuesday morning. So by the time this actually goes up on the website, we might have been made to look like a fool. There might have been an addition or subtraction. But yeah, Scotty Phillips, all preseason long, when you and I are on the sidelines of 3 games, nudge each other when you have a nice run. And then he peeled off that first big run of the night last week here against the Buccaneers. It was one of those runs that was long enough that you were on one side of the field with me on one side of the bench, that you had to go to the other side of the bench. And as you were walking away, we both looked at each other and we're like, he better make this team. So and he did.
And it's so funny because we know each other. We kind of know, we don't even have to say it. We can just look at each other and be like, yeah, you kind of know what it means. And it was interesting because in that press conference, Nick he was asked about the running back position, keeping 5, and he alluded to the fact that, look, if you put a player, it wasn't just the running backs, but he said this when talking about the running backs, or asked about the running backs. He was asked about that group, and he said, look, there's some players, when you subject them to the waiver process, you just know you're not getting them back.
Yeah.
And at that point, unspoken communication, and Mark Vandermeer was standing 6 feet away, being socially distanced, and I looked at him and I just kind of smiled because we both knew what that meant, and that probably was referring to Scotty Phillips. Now, he could totally have been, that was just our interpretation of it, and I'm sure it was a lot of people's interpretation, because had Scotty, we talked about it on the broadcast, I'm sure you guys did as well, Drew, that the way Scotty played in this preseason, the way he'd been in training camp, you put him on waivers, you were not getting him back. You weren't.
Gone.
He's on a 53-man roster somewhere, no doubt.
Yeah, it was fun to see, and congratulations to him. Like that's really awesome, because it was a dark year last year, and he didn't really get too many opportunities, and stuff was odd. And then he came in and he played his butt off during the preseason and really ran very, very well. So it was cool to see, and it's fun to see and hear about his relationship to the other guys in that running backs room, because it's for seasoned veterans and then him. And he's very, very quiet. The other 4, they'll chit chat and they'll talk, but he kind of keeps his cards close to the vest.
Yep.
Second time I've said that in this podcast, but it's fun to see, and I'm happy for him. And I'm happy that you and I got to do an In the Lab.
Yes.
It's been fun. So
It's back. I love it, man. It's awesome. Thank you.
we'll be back with our first regular season in the lab next week. It'll be the day after Labor Day. And we'll be having some fun chit-chatting about the week ahead, because the 53-man roster right now is going to look differently next week. I assure you that it does as we sit here right now. So till then, so long.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to know when we post new content.